Welcome, everybody, to the Superhuman Ascension Podcast, where we discuss consciousness, biohacking, neuroscience, and a lot more. I'm Caulen Lauria. I'm your host, and we're here with CJ Finley. I call him Mr. Thrive, and he's one of our awesome community jammers here in Austin, Texas. We're hosting this podcast here at the Ascension Brain headquarters and Cryo Bodyworks headquarters. It's a supercharged wellness facility, and we do tons of different things for acute and serious conditions, general wellness, pain management, stem cell therapy, and much more. So if you want to learn more about us, take a look at cryobodyworks.com and ascensionbrain.com. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here, everybody, and it's good to have you, dude.
Man,
yeah,
what a pleasure. This is such an awesome setup. Having a podcast myself and just getting to see other people, how they set it up, is always inspiring to me, and I just take ideas from everywhere I go. So I love the lighting and everything you got going on here, and I'm really excited for this combo.
Hell yeah. Well, just to give people a little bit of an understanding, we're in a bit of a construction zone because all of the technology that we have here at the facility, we're upgrading, and we do things from like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cryotherapy, electromagnetic field therapy, which you see right here. We're a full vitamin lounge. We have infrared laser therapy, red lights, infrared saunas, and much more. So you might hear some noises in the background. It's because there's some serious work happening to make it possible for people to experience higher levels of wellness. And CJ is a master himself, and that's why we wanted to bring him on and explore more of this conversation. And there's no way we're going to be able to do it in just one podcast. So we'll bring him back on for more. There's so many things that I'd like to cover, but I want to hear a little bit more about Thrive, because I love this concept that you've brought back into the awareness of the Austin community and much more, which is we're meant to thrive, not just survive. And there's so many people that are in that state of fight or flight, and we need to switch the mentality, and you're doing it, and you're helping a lot of people. So tell us a little bit more about what you do, because it's powerful.
Yeah, so thank you for the intro, and again, just thank you for having me here today. I'm super stoked for this. And when I think of Thrive, I think of making every heartbeat count. And I have I think it's an EKG or a heart line tattooed on my forearm. And Thrive actually started with death. My wife, her dad died in a spin class at a YMCA, and he's in better shape than both you and he was when he died. And on her side, that's what happened for her. And then on my side, one of my aunts died at 40 of colon cancer, and she got it at 37. I just remember being a little kid when I was 10, and my cousins lost their mom, and I didn't really fully conceive like what had happened. And in my mid-20s, I have celiac disease. I started getting really ill, and I had the job. I was making close to six figures right out of college. I'm an engineer, and I had the friends. I had the social life. I had everything. So I thought. When it came down to it, as I started getting really sick, I started asking questions within my family. I knew her father had passed away, and I started really realizing that I was sacrificing my health for everything else in my life. And it was taking a toll on my relationship with the person I love most, which is my wife. It was taking a toll on my job. I couldn't focus on my job. I was getting sick. I wasn't competing. I'm a competitor, and I just didn't feel fulfilled with my everyday life. And when I took a step back, I started realizing that I was just on a treadmill, literally just surviving. I was making the money to pay bills. I wasn't making the money because I was fulfilled and using that money to make an impact on this world. I was sacrificing my health because of the ego that I had, where I wanted to tell people I was an engineer. Rather, what made me happy wasn't being an engineer. So once I started diving into what is it if I took basically all stimulus away from me, and I was on an island, and this is what I ask people to do. If you were on an island and you had no feedback, no stimulus, no criticism of what you would do with your life, what is it that you enjoy the most? And I always enjoyed conversation with other people and fitness, health and wellness, and just pushing myself to the limit. And I just wasn't doing any of that. So really, at the end of the day, Thrive on Life started as a personal mission for me to make every heartbeat count. And the way that it started was, again, I was in a corporate job. I was driving to work, and I was just like, I'm spending 45 minutes to an hour in a car, driving to work and back, and realizing that, wow, if I died in this moment, I would be really fucking pissed off at myself. Like, why am I doing this?
Totally.
This is not making every heartbeat count. So literally it just started as an Instagram account where I was pushing myself to make the most of the 24 hours that I had in each day. And long story short, what that turned into is helping other people do the very same, because when I quit my job, most people's fear is like, how am I going to make money? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to... Well, once you kind of figure it out on your own, you can then help other people do that. And now today we exist to help other mission-based people, brands, and businesses thrive, like you said. But really, that's a vague statement. What we really do is just challenge you to figure out what your why is and reverse engineer down what that goal actually is for you. Not for the degree, not for your parents, not for your friends or your significant other who's putting pressure on you, but like for you. What is it that you want out of this life? Because you have a finite amount of heartbeats, and once you kind of put that on the map, you start realizing in your head, I need to say no a lot more to a lot of the things around me. So that's really why I exist here on this earth, is just to challenge people to think about that. And when it comes to like career nowadays, I just do a bunch of different stuff that fulfill me, and I just try to make money along the way and use that money to impact other people. So that's kind of like where we're at right now, and I'm just super excited to be able to do that.
Unbelievable. I love that. In fact, I didn't know that the heart-centered focus was part of your mission, was part of the foundation of what you do. And it makes sense because this guy, apart from being a fierce athletic competitor, is a super loving, intelligent person. And he's very approachable, and that's a lot of intense energy for people to get acclimated to if they don't understand it. But really understanding that, I think people in this day and age, they need to kind of open their hearts in a way that opens them into what their highest passion is. Mm-hmm. The way that you were illustrating the story of him actually dying while doing something physical, while doing something athletic, while doing exercise in general, that I think would come to a surprise to people. It's like there's something more here. Okay, it's not just about physical fitness. If you can die in an exercise class, there's got to be something else that we need to look at beyond just exercising.
And that is the key. That was the key for me, because when I would go to doctors, like I've always been fit, and doctors were telling me, you look great. Like, what are you doing here? And I'm getting all these blood tests, all these different things done, and it was all mental. It was all like, now I meditate, now I've slowed down, now I focus more on recovery. So chiropractor, cryo, float tanks, saunas, like ice baths. Like I looked into all of it. And I never really looked into any of those things because, again, it's not a mainstream thing. You think like, oh, to be healthy, I just eat a little bit better and I just exercise. When the reality of it is there's such a mind-gut connection that my mind was all over the place. And I was not happy with my life, so it made it even worse. And then my gut got really bad. When exercise doesn't really help that, it helps your mind for a minute amount of time. So like when I would work out, I felt great, and then slightly after that. But then I had no modality to help me relax and recover. And most of the time you're relaxed and recovered throughout the day. You're not exercising throughout the day. So once I started doing more studying into, okay, well, I'm only working out 1 hour a day, and if I sleep for 7 hours a day, okay, so that's 8 total, I have 16 to 18 hours of time where I'm just recovering and relaxing. And if I can't control this crazy monkey mind that I have, then it's going to cause a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety as I move forward. And that's where with her father, I mean, this is going back, I think, like 20 years ago, he was exercising and doing CrossFit style exercises before they even existed. He would put sandbags on a broomstick and like walk in his backyard. And he was an All-American soccer player at UPenn when in the 70s, I think. And he just always kept that up. He was a runner. He ran marathons. He did all these things. But in the 90s, there was no talk about recovery, mental health, how all that plays. And for me, I consider myself, it's a blessing and a curse that he passed away, because he made us really look at, like, okay, if this guy who is somebody that I want to look like when I'm 52, right, he meets his demise when you would never have thought it, right? He was the healthiest in the entire family. He has 3 other brothers, and they're all still alive, and they are way less healthy than he is, right? They were smokers, drinkers, and he didn't do any of that, and he was the one that passed away. So it really opened our eyes to, wow, there's more to this. And for me, I started looking at a molecular level, like a cellular level, of if I can change my individual cells, then my whole body starts getting better. So that's where I started doing testing into like micro and macronutrients of like what I'm putting into my body, how are they affecting my cells, and then if my cells are primed for the entire day, I'm going to feel better, and my monkey mind now becomes more of a monk mind, where I can control on and off.
I love that.
As much as possible. And that's really what I started tackling, was the mindset. I was like, I've been an athlete my whole life. You want me to run a mile, I can go do it. You want me to run 10 miles, I'll grit through it. But if you ask me to sit in a room and be quiet for an hour, that would have been the biggest struggle. So that's really where I flipped my script and started focusing on that, reading, meditating, sitting in silence, hanging around other people that did it, because that's the number one thing I recommend for anybody is I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I hang around other people that already are meditating, already are living a little bit slower of a life, but I realized that they were reaching way more of a potential than I was for some reason, and that's where I started really getting into it. And now, like, I think I'm probably a year or two away from kind of curing all the pain that I accrued over a 25-year period.
Powerful. Yeah, that must get you really questioning your health in a full spectrum. You know, when it's your family that dies during exercise. And, that's certainly powerful. You're right, it's a blessing and a curse. But how intelligent for you and intuitive to start focusing on the cell. We've got 40 trillion cells. You focus on one of those, and you focus on all of them at the same time, because they're all made up of the same things. They've all got mitochondria. They all have their cell membrane and how that function works, how they metabolize, and how they need to process waste out of the cell and keep inflammation down, the nutrition that goes in to support that, everything. So brilliant for you to
and I kind of looked at it, I kind of looked at it exactly what you just said. I was just like, well, one, I noted to myself, like, I was shitty to myself for 25 years, unknowingly. Like, in the 90s, it was very low-fat, high-sugar. Like, I was eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast and just not doing the right things for my body. Again, nobody knew back then. Mm-hmm. But now that we do know, I think so many people are so naive that it's really, it's logical. Like, I think of our bodies as a car. People save up money to buy premium cars, then they go put premium gas in it. They don't put shitty gas in their nice car. But then that same person is 40 pounds overweight, putting shitty gas into themselves, and it just baffles me. And the one thing I think I did for myself that a lot of other people don't do is they want instant gratification, versus I said, you know what, I did 25 years of really bad things to my body. This is going to take a long time. Mm-hmm. It's not just going to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. At first I was expecting it to. I would go to the doctors and take a pill, and then that didn't work. And then I would take a probiotic, and that didn't work. And then I would smoke a bunch of weed, and that didn't work. And that's when I was just like, okay, this is a long-term game. Like, just like how, think of a river, like carving rock. You would never think that a river could carve a rock. But then 30 years of it just constant motion over it, it carves the rock. So for me, I started thinking...
Yeah, water's not powerful. Look at a tsunami. My God.
Yeah, exactly. So I started thinking, how do I just be that river that's constantly trying to iterate and fix from a cellular level? And then eventually, like, I'm a big believer in epigenetics, where I'm going to change my cells. Mm-hmm. I moved to a city in Austin, Texas. We purposely moved here. More sun. outside all the time, get to have my shirt off a lot. I get to be free.
Yeah.
I get to feel free mentally, physically, spiritually more. I'm going to fix my cells that way. I get to have grass-fed animals because we live in Texas where there's a lot more ranches than there are anywhere else. And it's just like, that's how I started thinking. And that's really, I'm obsessed with education reform. I'm basically a guinea pig now in my 20s and my 30s. And then like, I think the 40s and 50s are somewhere where I'm going to look at like building a school to get people really thriving, because I'm a believer in, again, that long-term methodology. If I just shout from the rooftops, nobody's going to listen to me. But if I can kind of like gather data and make connections with brilliant minds like yourself over the course of the next 20 years, like I'm going to be able to make a much larger impact than I would if I just like, again, shouted from the rooftops. This is what you need to do. It's like, no, like everybody has their own protocol, but here's the questions you should be asking.
Grateful to share that between us and educate everybody, because starting this podcast is a big education experience for me, and everybody wants to share in that conversation. Taking into consideration the monkey mind and how you put that in transforming that into the monk mind. If we're just translating our monkey mind from our normal life into our exercise, that's not solving the problem, right? We're just, and your father, or your father?
My wife's father, Aaron's father.
Yes, Aaron's father. Had that, demonstrated, that is a lesson for all of us, for sure. But I think that's leading into the topic that you brought, which is epigenetics. Epigenetics in the last 10 years is absolutely powerful. And if you haven't heard about it, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, they all talk about this. The leading science of our age right now is showing us that every tissue in our body can be regrown. Brain tissue, heart tissue, pancreatic tissue, all of that. And only about 5% of our genes are fixed. If you think about predetermined conditions, where you having this approach to question your health after this happened for your father-in-law, it may lead you to wonder, is this something that I'm going to be facing as a predetermined condition? Fortunately, with epigenetics and the right mentality, you can reprogram yourself, and people are starting to have this awareness. It's super powerful, and it's something that we employ with the treatments that we do here as well. So thank you for that. I think we're probably running short on time, but I do want to touch on some of the other things, which are how we get in our flow state. What are some of the things that get you into your flow state?
First you would have to kind of deduce down to, for you, and the question for me to answer that, what are you kind of considering a flow state? So I feel like I have different flow states throughout my day for different reasons, but which one, what is your definition of it? So that way I can kind of formulate and give the best answer possible for the audience.
So with understanding all of the different studies that we have accessible to us from especially Dr. Joe Dispenza, we're looking at brainwave states, and we're finding that the alpha brainwave state is really important as far as getting into general day in, day out flow state and getting in tune with what your heart's deepest passion is and what keeps you in that state there. I think a lot about the flow state as it is dependent on being able to access all of the brainwave states. We have EEG, EOG sensors that we can hook up on our brain here. We can meditate and we can identify where our mind is getting distracted. And these tools are really helpful in raising our consciousness in general. Meditation being one of the most powerful ways to find day-to-day enlightenment and serenity so that we can get into that flow state. And specifically, looking at how we can get into coherent gamma brainwave activation. Looking at, we'll talk a lot more about all of the different brainwave states in our future podcasts, but gamma is really powerful supercomputing brainwave state. But we need to be able to access these brainwave states in all different dimensions. One of the specific ways is when we're sleeping. And so, one of the ways that I get my flow state is going into really, really healthy sleep patterns, because people are trying in this day and age to get to coherent brainwave activation, but we're struggling. When we're eating late, it's interrupting our ability to go into those deeper states of sleep. And there's a lot of things that stack up to getting to the flow state, but the ones that are most impactful for your routine, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, I think just sharing with the audience a little bit of some of the secrets, because we can't go into all of them right now.
Yeah, so I think you poked on a key word there, distraction. So when I think of flow state, I don't necessarily think of like what gets you in flow state. I think of like what takes you out of flow state. That's the number one thing that if I'm talking to anybody is, what is distracting you? Take all those things away, take all that stimulus away, then you're 99% more likely to get into some type of flow state that you want to operate in. So for me, the number one thing is like, if I break my day into chunks, and if you think just from an optimal human being, what most people do when they wake up is they're not priming themselves because they're taking on distraction. So a lot of people, as soon as they wake up, their phone's next to their bed, or they immediately go and get coffee. They immediately start stimulating themselves rather than sitting with themselves and realizing, what does my body need right now? Most people never learn that. So the first thing I do every day is different. And that's another thing, is most people try to attack every day is the same way, where there's like, you have all these preachers out there like, wake up at 4 a.m. every single day, like follow the same routine every single day. But that's just not reality. Reality is the day before you ate something, you worked out in a certain way. Every day is different, even if you have a similar routine. So what I look at is I look at a 24-hour time frame of like, okay, if I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock right now, what is 7 to 8 hours of sleep? So that's the number one thing, is like, I try my best to never get less than 7 hours of sleep. If you can operate off less than that, cool. But for me, having like the autoimmune issues that I have, I realized that like 7 hours of sleep, if I get it, I can operate at 150% capacity. And in between the 7 and 8, I don't really need, it doesn't make a difference. So I don't really set an alarm to do an exact. But then as soon as I wake up, like my phone, I don't charge in my room. So immediately I sit with myself, I go get water, I drink lemon, L-glutamine, and sea salt. And I have a big ass Yeti that I chug the entire thing. Then I sit there. Typically what I'll do is go open my front door, and if it's a little bit nice outside, just take a couple of deep breaths outside just to like hear the birds and like, again, get adjusted to actually being awake. And then I sit there and think, okay, what do I need? And most times in the morning, like my routine is a combination of some form of sweat, some form of mental challenge, and then stillness. So either running or riding on the Peloton. Reading, I constantly read in the morning. So that's like my number one non-negotiable is reading, is because, again, I'm priming my brain for the rest of the day. And I also think, like, I'm a competitive person. I think to myself, over a 30 to 50 year span, where am I going to get a leg up on everybody else out there? Everyone talks exercise, everyone talks meditation. Not many people are going to read at least 10 pages every single morning. So that's kind of like what I attack, is like this variable that most people aren't doing. And then meditation. So at least 5 to 10 minutes. I found that a lot of people say you need 20, 30, 40 minutes to get in this like deep meditative state. I'm the type of person where I'm not necessarily trying to get in this deep meditative state. I'm trying to get into a meditative state as quickly as possible. If I can do that, I can shift my brain on and off throughout the day faster than everybody else. I don't need a lot of time. So I focus on, over the past like 6 months, how quickly can I get away from the monkey mind. So once I wake up, it's not about how long can I meditate, it's how quickly can I feel like I lost that monkey mind, and training myself to get into it really quickly. So that way, when I'm in a state of anxiousness throughout any day, I can literally take a step back and get into that state really quickly, even if I only have 5 minutes. Like say you're in an airport, you're not going to have an hour. So I focused on the variable, how do I get into it as quickly as possible? And then that solves that problem for me. Now, everybody else, you might have a different lifestyle. You might have a slower lifestyle than me, and you can take on that 30 to 60 minutes. I just don't, that's just not who I am. So I focused on the variable of getting in there quickly. Other than that,
I do that a lot.
Yeah. Other than that, the flow state that I go into during the day, and Jake and my other interns who saw me this summer can attest to this, I always keep the vibe high. And the way that I do this is a couple priming cues. Music is one of them. So if I'm on a Zoom call, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Now, what most people do is they go on the Zoom call, and then immediately, what's your first thing that you want to do, grab your phone, because you weren't on your phone for a while. So you want to check Instagram, you check everything you missed, right? Like, it's just an innate thing that we have a problem with now. I do the opposite. I go, Alexa, turn on Post Malone, or turn on whatever song I'm like ripping right then. And then I just dance around and like get moving again, get the blood flowing. So it's kind of weird, but it reminds myself of like you're in a tribe and it's like you're getting riled up, and it reminds me of sports. Before a game, like we put our headphones in and just like get primed, right? So in between every single energy transfer, I prime myself to get back in another state, and I don't pick up my phone, and then that way I'm ready for the next meeting, the next thing I have to do. And really at the end of the day, I focus on the KISS methodology, keep it stupid simple, like or keep it super simple, however you want to say it. But I just prime myself in each state, and then the days take care of themselves. Like, the way that I look at life is, if you have a good day, if you focus on having a good day, you're going to have great weeks. If you focus, because the days add up, right? So I live by the 4x3 rule. You have a week, which is 7 days. If you have 4 good days and even 3 bad days, you, from a percentage, had a better week than a bad week, right? Now, that fraction gets bigger every single week. So 4x3 becomes, 8x6 becomes, you can do the math after that. So exponentially over your life, you're going to continually grow to have better days and better weeks and better months and better years, just if you focus on, okay, I don't need to have amazing day every single day. I just need to make sure that every day is routinely getting better, and that at the end of the week, when I look back on the week, did I have more good days than bad days? If yes, check that off, and you do the same thing the next week, and you're exponentially growing in a state, because life throws you curveballs, as we know, and like, you're going to have bad days. So if you just accept that, okay, today's a bad day, but it's not going to be a bad week, you're already going to beat everybody else out there for the most part. And that just starts with the little priming cues that I was just like talking about. I was trying to speak as fast as possible to get that out. So that was a quick one.
Thriving and inspiring, making every heartbeat count. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. We'll have lots more episodes with CJ. Stay tuned. Have a great week. Appreciate it, brother.
And this was awesome. Thank you.